and that's under minute number 5, and the action was that Councillor Garland asked what the whistleblowing procedure was at Rushcliffe and how easy was it to access and use. That has been given in a written answer which was emailed to the group on the 27th of June, advising that the policy can be accessed via the councillor portal in the admin zone. So if anyone ever wants to double check that, then obviously that's there. So I will sign the minutes of the last meeting, and then we can. Today, 19th. I should have known, it's been that all day. And we can now move on to item number 4 on the agenda, which is the internal audit progress report. So I'd like to ask Charlotte to present that to us.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I'm pleased to present our internal audit progress report this evening. This summarises the progress, obviously, of our internal audit plan for 24-25. If you look at page 18 of the pack, the table there kind of shows the progress. So we've got 4 completed reviews that I'll run through this evening with you. We've also got cybersecurity has been pretty much completed, and that will come to the next group. And we've got 2 others in planning. So we're well on track to finalise the plan before March 25, which is our target. So I'll talk you through the review. So budgetary controls first. The purpose of this was to look at the assurance, to provide assurance over the arrangements on budgetary control, looking at budget consultation and the management and oversight. As part of this, the auditor interviewed budget holders, finance, went through monitoring documents, etc. And we concluded a really positive result, which is substantial assurance over the design and effectiveness of controls. We raised 2 low findings. One was around the fact that some budget holders would like some more training in kind of niche areas, and the other finding was around, whilst there was a baseline level of monitoring on variances, we did note in the budget monitoring sheets that there's a bit of a difference in some service areas in terms of the threshold at which they put comments on their variances. So if in some there might be a £200 variance and there's quite detailed notes, and then in another there might be a £1,300 one and not any notes. However, management did explain that part of that was around if it's salary variances, for example, it's not relevant to budget holders necessarily. So there were legitimate reasons for it, but we did think perhaps to improve consistency, a sort of specific threshold might be set. But overall, as I say, really strong performance and no areas of concern on that one. So if there's any questions on that report, I'm happy to.
Anyone got any questions on the report? No, I think.
Okay, so moving on to main financial systems. So as you know, we do this audit every year. This time we looked at accounts receivable and payroll. So again, we recorded lots of good practice and concluded a very positive opinion of substantial assurance over the design of controls and moderate over the effectiveness. We raised 4 low findings. Just to run through those quickly. So the first one was around journals under £10,000. So there are limited controls over journals under that figure. There are, for journals over that, there is segregation of duties, there is regular review. The council explains, again, it's mainly, there aren't many manual journals under that value, and so the risk was deemed lower, and you've got to be proportionate in terms of how, the resource you put into that. But it's just something that we would always flag, so we've included it in our findings. Second was around the setting up of suppliers, and there being a lack of an audit trail in the system for evidencing that supplier details had been checked, which was also raised by external audit, I think. And then the other two findings were around payroll. So the Gedling manages payroll for Rushcliffe, and the segregation of duties is kind of natural in that because they are doing that, Rushcliffe requests any changes and Gedling implements those changes. But we found that the DHR team did actually have access to amend in the payroll system. Obviously, normally that wouldn't be a problem. Lots of councils have that, but because the segregation of controls was that Gedling has it and Rushcliffe didn't, then we just flagged it, and the staff weren't actually aware of that happening. I think during elections, staff are able to access it because obviously you have quite a lot of temporary staff that you need to add quickly, and then it just hadn't been taken away after that. But again, nothing too alarming. And then the final one was around, while payroll reconciliations are happening on a monthly basis, we confirmed that there was just one instance when the review of the reconciliation had taken place 5 weeks later. So we would just always recommend that be a bit more timely, but it was a one-off. So again, no real concerns there. So are there any questions on the MFS report?
Anyone got any questions on that part of the report? Yes.
Just a quick question. Probably I'm not familiar with the language. So the one you talk about the lack of separation of duty in the general entry process.
Yeah.
If I understand, then a person raises and approves at the same time. Is not that always electronically done? Is it just because if it is electronically done, I would assume based on my work, there are check and balances, and you cannot do it depending on your control of the IT system and your role. How does it work?
Yeah, just on this one, I think anyone in the finance team can make that entry without there being an approval for under £10,000. That's fine.
Is it manually done? Is it not the IT? The IT permits that they have. How does it work that the person can raise a purchase order and approve it itself?
Can I just confirm that you're talking about journals, posting journals in the system?
Yeah.
So yeah, so the team can post manual journals within the system, but any changes that are posted would be picked up. It's not a payment as such; it's just balances within the general ledger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any?
Sorry, question about journals again. So £10,000 seems to be quite a high threshold, given that in corporate fraud, as embezzlement cases, there tend to be high frequency, small transactions that can be hidden in journals. Is there anything that, first of all, why is the threshold so high, and is there anything we can do to obviously not monitor all the journals below that threshold, because obviously that's a large volume of work, but anything we can do to sort of mitigate the risk?
Well, what we recommended in the report, in the full report, was that, because we agree, the council has said that most of them aren't manual; they were kind of automatic ones, and therefore the risk was lower. But we thought that perhaps if the management review all journals over that threshold on a regular basis, so could we not include manual journals under £10,000 in that review process? That maybe Sarah can pick up on.
The system itself doesn't have a workflow process in it, so in terms of authorising those journals, it doesn't have that within the system. Where it would be picked up is during budget monitoring, so any journals that are done would be picked up on the individual codes during the budget monitoring process. But any new system going forward or upgrades to the system, we would look to sort of see whether we could implement a workflow within there, so that all journals would then go to somebody to be double checked, but the risk is low with the number of manual journals that are actually put through. And
also just to note, the system is quite common in other local authorities as well, that they don't have it in the system, but then sometimes they do have that extra check in place, that manual kind of email checks to say, yeah, I've looked at these and happy. So
Everybody happy with that, Councillor?
Yeah, just a very quick one. So there was recently something in the news in Gedling Borough where there was a bit of a naughty incident occurred. Obviously that didn't work in that instance. Has there been anything that's been raised from that or learnt from that process that's been implemented here and is applicable to Rushcliffe?
Yeah, we obviously can't talk in detail about what's happened at Gedling. However, you can feel assured that we have had discussions with management because they've been very proactive in asking us if there's been any control deficiencies identified there. Can you reflect it in your testing of what we're doing? So any audits that we've done, we've made sure we've included those risks in what we do.
Were you employed by Gedling?
We are the internal auditors for Gedling as well. Yeah, yeah. And we did a piece of work last year looking at what had gone wrong, and
Right.
so we've learned. You know, we've got the.
Went a bit wrong, didn't it?
It went wrong.
Okay, any other? I think that's probably it. I thought there were no questions and suddenly got a slew of them. But anyway, I think obviously we are here to scrutinise the reports. So yeah, thank you for your questions. And I think actually the other thing I take from the reports is that they're small adjustments we're being asked to make generally, and I think that I'm always pleased to see the officer responses are normally very positive about how to take them on board. So,
Thank you. So moving on to the third review, which was workforce and succession planning. So the purpose of this was to look at the workforce succession planning arrangements, check whether key roles have been identified and plans in place to fulfil them, and generate a pipeline of talent. And once again, lots of good practice. The council really has clearly identified those critical roles and the pipeline of talent, and it has a really strong culture of empowering staff and healthy training budgets and promoting people taking up leadership training, etc. We raised two low findings. The first was around, we benchmarked the plans, the documents to the CIPD best practice, and in that it has a recommendation around making sure you look at your whole workforce plan and your whole workforce and what your service demand is, and then doing that, kind of projecting that for the medium and long term, and just then doing a gap analysis on have you got the right staff to meet that demand, etc. That wasn't done in a real granular level at the council, but once again, I've yet to see that happen anywhere in local government. So it wasn't significant, and we were assured because that the CEO has extremely strong relationships with all the different heads of service and directors, and there's constant dialogue, away days. There's been discussions around an AI strategy. So that was what I was really concerned about, was just how is AI going to impact on the workforce? And there are discussions and reports happening into that. So we were assured on that front. And then the second point was just around identifying high performers. So the appraisal process obviously happens annually. There's an appraisal document that's completed for all staff called PDR, Personal Development Record. Just looking at those, they're quite kind of open-ended questions. There's no, the council took a decision not to have a kind of scoring mechanism for appraisals, which is a legitimate approach. But equally, I think having some kind of objective competency framework for roles just helps give you that unbiased, objective sort of evaluation of performance, and then it enables the council to evidence kind of unbiased attitudes towards promotions and things like that. So we just raised a low recommendation around potentially doing that. Plus, the completion rate was at 60% at the time of audit. So not everyone had their appraisals. Again, the council has already identified that, and it was because that was to do with a lot of manual staff not being able to do it at the particular time of year that the appraisal process happens. And so they're going to change that to enable better completion. Again, overall a really strong opinion, so we were happy with it. And that concludes that report. So any questions on that?
Poised to ask a question.
Well, not a very exciting question, but yeah, very impressive, some of the things that you've got in the report. I noted high retention rates, high levels of job satisfaction, limited long-term vacancies. I was wondering if you got specific data to see, or was that just a a sort of subjective view?
Yeah, that's based on just our knowledge of the council in terms of we've worked here now for a few years, and we are aware when there are vacancies, particularly in critical roles, and we haven't seen any issues in that regard. So, and also retention rates. Yes, we have got particular stats on that. I don't have them to hand, but they are high, and I think that's been reported to cabinet before. I could come back to you with specifics if you like. I could. Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Would you like some specifics at some stage, or just?
Yeah, it's
that it's there. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm satisfied with it.
You're satisfied that the data is there, but you don't really need to have it for bedtime reading.
Okay.
There's a question. You mentioned that the corporate training budget was 57K and it was spent 44K, approximately 43 something. What happens to the surplus of this budget?
I think it goes. So that was the 1 second, because there's two different budgets, isn't there? I think it goes into the other trading budget essentially. I think it goes sort of consolidates into the overall corporate. The departmental ones go to corporate, I think. But I'd have to double check on that.
Okay.
So I think actually I've got a question, and it's very mundane. What is pulse? It's on page 28. It says pulse stroke SWOT analysis. No, not pulse, pestle.
Oh yeah. So that's you got me now. It's sort of political, economic, social,
technology.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, environmental, and then strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
Yeah, no, I know what SWOT analysis is, obviously, but I must have been, but it was a bit of a. It was one I. What's that mean?
Oh, okay.
So, okay.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, shouldn't be an acronym without an explanation. So
No.
noted for.
It doesn't
reports.
matter. It was an acronym that I couldn't think. Don't know that one. Anyway,
it is quite a useful process to
No,
go
I
through,
know.
but it's yeah.
Okay. Okay. So final bit of the report, Charlotte.
Yeah, and then the fourth piece of work was the. So my colleague Max brought the annual fraud report to the last group, but there was a second part of that piece of work, which was the council has produced its own fraud risk assessment voluntarily, which is impressive. Then they asked BDO's counter fraud team to do a review of it. So that review has been done. It's not an audit, so it doesn't generate an assurance opinion. It's just benchmarks it against kind of government's functional standard, counter fraud standard. And there's a summary here. Obviously, just because it's to do with fraud, we don't put the full report in here, but essentially the counter fraud team have raised 3 key points. They're all largely to do with methodology of generating the fraud risk assessment as opposed to identifying any particular fraud risk. They are the fact that, so the first one is around financial statement risk not being being a standalone risk in the corporate risk register, but external audit looks at that every year. So we feel as internal audit that that's mitigated. The second was around insider fraud being a part of multiple risks in the fraud risk assessment, but the particular wording doesn't match what the functional standard recommends, which is sort of laying it out, saying actor, action, and consequence. Again, that's just kind of, it would help the counter fraud team identify further any potential issues if actors were specified, and so they weren't in that risk assessment. And then the third one was around grants, the completeness of grant risk. There was one grant that the counter fraud team noted wasn't in the fraud risk assessment, which management might want to. I think it was a small, low level risk one anyway. It's important to note, I think, that the functional standard is at the extremely sophisticated, mature end of fraud risk assessment, and that regime just doesn't really exist in local government. Our counter fraud team do this work in lots of different sectors and environments, and so to put it in context, Rushcliffe is actually quite ahead in terms of doing the fraud risk assessment in the first place, and then also trying to get it reviewed by counter-fraud professionals. So, yeah, there's nothing alarming in that report at all. It's just about methodology, essentially.
Okay. Any questions on that, Councillor Birch?
Thank you. Yeah, just going back to the Gedling thing. So in case I'm missing something here, your company was auditing Gedling.
Internal audit, yeah.
Right. So the fraud that went on, it's been in the press, so I guess I can talk about it. The guy's been done. It was £1 million worth of taxpayer money that got stolen. Were you overseeing that? Is that a mistake that your organisation has made? Were you responsible for missing? Did you miss something in that process?
We're not aware that we missed anything in our internal audit testing. Obviously, you can never, even if you provide assurance, substantial assurance report, you still can't provide 100% assurance that there is never going to be any fraud in a particular area. You know, that's kind of set out in all our reports. I mean, I am limited into what I can actually say at the moment. There are things that I would like to tell you, but I can't quite at the moment. But it's sorry.
Yeah, I'm on.
But just to add, I suppose obviously if that particular fraud went on for, I don't know, long time, like 15 years, whatever that involved. BDO weren't just the only auditors. I think RSM were auditors. They've had other auditors, so it's just as Charlotte said, unfortunately, you can have all the internal controls, and frauds happen. Obviously, we try and mitigate them as best we can through controls, and we can't really say too much because obviously the Gedling, it's a Gedling issue, not a Rushcliffe issue.
Yeah, I just thought it was prudent to ask the question because obviously, if there is some learnings, I hate that word, but if that's what people say, if there's something that could help Rushcliffe that we could learn from that, then I think it's obviously topical and prudent to ask it.
It's incredibly serious, and I completely understand you asking that question.
I mean, it's one of the first things I discussed with the audit manager. What were the control? Well, I explicitly asked that we would, whatever controls deficiencies there may have been, that wasn't applicable to Rushcliffe, and that we were looked at in that context.
Does that give you more confidence, Councillor Birch, that other councils might work some ways and we work better? We hope. Okay. So, is that so, Charlotte? That's your report's done. Any further questions? So the recommendation is that we take notice of the report, basically. So I think we've taken due notice of it, and thank you very much, Charlotte. I don't know if you were staying. I know you sometimes do. If you wish to stay, that's fine. If you wish to go, that's also fine.
Thank you. I might leave because I've got to get the train.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so thank you very much, Charlotte.
We'll watch this on the train.
Okay, so this is where we come to the slight change in the agenda, and we're going to go to item 7, which is now item 5, the statement of accounts. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah Whitaker for the statement of accounts.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just going to briefly go over the summary of the statement of accounts before Bethan discusses her 2 reports, which are linked to the statement itself. So the statement of accounts themselves start on page 117 of your pack. Para 1.3 in the report refers to the delay in meeting the deadline for publishing the accounts, which Bethan is going to cover in a bit more detail along with any other relevant points when she does her report. So the key statements can be found on pages 177 to 183, with the notes commencing from page 184, which give a little bit more detail on the accounts themselves. So paragraph 4.4 discusses the approach to the audit that Forvis Mazars have taken, and that there have been no issues raised during the audit. Paragraph 4.7 summarises the key points, so I won't go through them all again, but just to I'll cover off the main points, which are there's a net budget variance, which included the business rates, pool surplus, and our use of reserves. There's an overall net increase in net worth, part of which is due to movement in the pension reserves as a result of the actuarial assumptions. The summary also covers the main areas of capital spend, and that these have been funded mainly by capital receipts and reserves, with no need to externally borrow in the 23-24 financial year. The collection fund balances are fairly low at 356,000 for business rates and 98,000 for council tax, and that's for the whole collection fund. Rushcliffe's share is a proportion of that. And the summary also covers a summary of the climate change, the use of the climate change reserve, and some planned future works out of that reserve. It also highlights the challenges going forward that we face in terms of inflation, ongoing elevated inflation, and sourcing some of the corporate projects and the climate change agenda, and also continuing to deliver services in these circumstances. We also have new pressures from new duties such as simpler recycling, which are also going to impact us in terms of our ongoing revenue budget. Paragraph 6.1 talks a little bit about the cost of audit, which, as you know from previous reports, has increased significantly from 56k to 128k for this year, plus around 9,000 for variations. So it's quite a significant increase, but again, we've covered this before. So that's my summary on the statement, and then if you've got any questions, answer those now, or you can wait till Bethan has covered hers.
So should we wait till Bethan's covered the reports, or is that what's the best thing to do? Yeah. So we'll now go to the reports, and so keep the questions till the end, and then when Bethan's given her reports, we can ask any questions on the accounts. Okay, Bethan, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So our first report is our audit completion report. Our 23-24 audit is substantially complete, with a few matters outstanding to resolve. Once those matters are finalised, our audit will be complete and we can issue our audit opinion. The draft audit opinion is shown in the appendix of the report. We expect to issue a clean, unmodified opinion. Page 51 of the pack details what was outstanding at the time of writing the report. So just to bring you an update on those items as of today. In relation to the property, plant and equipment, we have now received the third-party information that we were waiting on, which will allow us to finalise our work in this area. And then we have also today received the final third-party confirmation that we were waiting for on the cash and cash equivalents work. So we'll also be able to finalise that. In relation to pensions, we are awaiting the completion of the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund audit, so that we can then get a response to our letter requesting assurances from the work that they've done. In addition, since writing this report, there is a new emerging issue that has come to light in relation to pensions. So this is a technical pensions issue that's been raised by the FRC. So it's literally come out this week, so that's as much as I can probably say on it at the moment, other than it's an issue that will affect all authorities and all auditors. So it's not specific to Rushcliffe, it's kind of across the board. So at the moment, we're just waiting for further guidance on that so that we can make sure we take any necessary steps in relation to that before we finalise the audit. And the last point around completion procedures, that will remain ongoing until the date we sign the audit opinion. Once we finalise these items and we're in a position to sign our report, we'll issue a audit completion follow-up letter. So that will just follow up the kind of final outcomes of those items that have been listed as outstanding today. Section 3 of the report then recaps our audit approach, which was set out in our audit strategy memorandum. And this confirms that there have been no changes to the approach since that report. Section 4 then details our significant findings. Firstly, our conclusion on the significant risk areas. The first significant risk area was management override of controls. Our work in that area is complete and we've not identified any issues. Page 56 then details the significant risk around pensions. So as just mentioned, that work is ongoing whilst we wait for the assurance from the pension fund auditor, as well as the further guidance on this new emerging issue. But from the work completed to date, no issues have been identified. And then finally, for the significant risks, we have the valuation of land, buildings and investment properties. Our work is complete on the assets that have been revalued in year. No issues have been identified from that work. And we are just finalising our review of the assets not revalued in year now that we've received the required information that we were waiting on. Page 58 then details qualitative aspects of the council's accounting practices. We've confirmed that the council's accounting policies do comply with the CITFA Code of Practice. However, we've recommended that council could refine their accounts slightly by removing some immaterial notes in order to ensure that the information in the accounts is concise and relevant, improving the understandability for readers. We've also detailed some other matters that we've discussed with management. The topic of pooled investments is consistent with the prior year, and that's something that we know that the council regularly updates the committee on, so that's just there for information only. The last 2 points are in relation to audit findings relating to multi-year contracts. So there's 2 parts to that. One is the split between long-term and short-term, and that's been fully corrected in year, as shown later in the report in the adjusted misstatements. And then there's a point around how the split between years is calculated, and that's been included as a recommendation in section 5, where the council have agreed that and agreed to action that going forwards. Page 59 also confirms that we haven't encountered any significant difficulties during the audit. We have had the full support of management throughout, and we also have not had to exercise any of our wider powers and have not received any objections from local electors. Section 5 then details the internal control recommendations that we've made, and management have responded to all of those points and taken action forwards. Section 6 details the misstatements identified. There was one unadjusted misstatement as detailed on page 67. So this was, as I just mentioned, in relation to multi-year contracts. So the council had included a full year's worth of expenditure within the 23-24 accounts for an item where the contract started in August 2023. So they should have only recognised 8 months worth of expenditure. The actual value of that error was £6,000. But when we do sample testing and identify an error within that sample, what we do is we do an extrapolation calculation. So we work out the error rate within what we have tested, and we then apply that to the untested population, just to kind of quantify if this error was repeated in the items we haven't looked at, this is the maximum possible error. And because that's not material, that means we can conclude our work without doing any additional work. So that's where that £164,000 comes from in that table. But as I say, that's just sort of an auditor calculation to kind of justify to ourselves that it's not a material issue. Page 68 then details the misstatements that have been corrected during the audit. The first one was due to an adjustment being credited to debtors rather than credited by mistake, and as I say, that's now been corrected. The second was a classification adjustment between long-term and short-term in relation to receipts in advance. And the final adjustment was for a similar reason, being the classification between long-term and short-term on prepayments or payments in advance. The council did undertake a full review of items of that nature to ensure that all of those had been corrected and appropriately classified between short-term and long-term. Then there was a number of disclosure misstatements as detailed on page 69, and again, all of those have been corrected. Section 7 then covers VFM, so I was going to skip over that within this report because my next report goes through the value for money work in full detail. So I don't know if you wanted to pause for questions on that one first, or do you want me to continue on to the next report?
I would think probably just continue if everyone's happy to continue and ask questions at the end.
Yeah, no problem. So our next report is our auditor's annual report. So this report details our work done on value for money arrangements. This is the draft report at the moment, but our work is complete. So all that needs to be updated within this report is the final outcome of the accounts audit and the date of signing the audit report, which, as we've just discussed, will take place once we've cleared those items listed as outstanding in the audit completion report. Section 2 of the annual auditor's report summarises the audit findings, which I've just been through from the audit completion report. Section 3 then includes our value for money commentary. Page 101 of the packs recaps our approach to the value for money work. We're required to consider the arrangements that the council have in place across the 3 criteria detailed in the report. So financial sustainability, which is how the council plans and manages its resources to ensure it can continue to deliver its services. Governance, which is how the council ensures it makes informed decisions and properly manages its risks. And improving economy efficiency and effectiveness, which is how the council uses information about its costs and performance to improve the way it manages and delivers its services. So we don't provide an opinion on whether the council actually provides value for money or an opinion on the decisions that the council make, but we review the arrangements and processes that they've got in place to ensure that they're making informed decisions, managing their risks appropriately, managing resources effectively, etc. Page 102 summarises our findings, which are that we didn't identify any risks of or actual significant weaknesses in any of the criteria, and we haven't made any of the recommendations. The rest of the report then includes our commentary across those 3 criteria, but I will take that as read, but happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, so quite a lot to digest there, and some fairly lengthy reports. Did anyone have anything, specific items they wish to raise on the accounts, or Councillor Calvert?
Yeah, just a couple of questions on the covering report. So we're talking about pages on item 7, 117. Actually, it's page 118 and page 119. I wanted to raise. On what? Well, it's not really a query. It's a clarification of what it means. On page 119, we've got second bullet point, net transfer to reserves of 1.958 million, and then talks about net and so on. And then the next bullet point is 5.069 million transfer to reserves. I'm just wondering why these two are separated. Are they different transfers? Do you get my drift?
Yes, sorry, I do get your question. So the net transfer is the amount of transfers to from added together, and then the second and third bullet points explains how much was transferred in and how much was transferred out to arrive at that net figure.
Okay.
Yeah, unless Pete is, no, I'll go back and ask that. Yeah.
To clarify, you're on about the council report, aren't you? Full council. Yeah, okay. So obviously we're considering this report, but
It's paragraph
Of the council. Yeah, it's a bit difficult to consider a council report that we're not debating till a week today. I think.
Well, it's just it would be helpful if somebody at some stage after this.
I'm glad you've got that far ahead with your reading, actually.
Well, I collected the.
Yeah, Yeah, I think it would be. It's not. I think it's probably not right to.
No, it's
Try, I think because it's a report that we've not even all got or had a chance to read.
Yeah, it's just very question about the target.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions to raise on that? So there's, as I said earlier, it's a lot of information there. So
just a couple of comments really. Firstly, to thank external audit, although we're not quite there yet. We thought we were nearly there, but this issue that's arisen is hopefully won't take too long to resolve. I just want to, I suppose, just reflecting on where we're at with the accounts. You know, we're in an excellent position as an authority. Many councils have got several years of accounts, have still got to get audited. And it is important to have good sets of accounts and up-to-date accounts. They are the bedrock of making good financial decisions. And so we are in that position where it gives us at least that good starting point upon which you can rely on the figures before you set the budgets. So it is important that we are in that good place. So I just want to thank the team as well for the work they do. You can see the size of the document. It does take a lot of work. It's not just producing the document. There's lots of working papers that go behind it, and quite a lot of work. So I was also thanking the team.
You've done my job for me, so I was going to do exactly the same thing. No, I think it is important that we are where we are, and as advanced as we are, particularly compared with other councils. Obviously, I thank you for all the work you do on it, and I think I asked the question last year: how do we get here so quickly? And it's basically because, and I think the response was that the quality of reports that get delivered to you makes your job a lot easier. So I think that's a great sort of endorsement of Peter and his team, basically. I think actually, from memory, we're sort of further ahead than last year, aren't we? Yeah, so it's even better. So I think that is very good, and as Pete says, it's very important as a council that the earlier that we get all of these things signed off, the more real we can be in terms of knowing how to plan for the future, basically, and make sure our finances are in order. So very much endorse what Peter said about the team and what have you. So we've been asked to, so there's three recommendations to consider. First of all, the statement of accounts, where it's recommended that we approve the statement of accounts for 2023-24, including the annual governance statement at section B. Obviously, there's a further addition to that, but approve them as far as they are is I think what we're being asked to do. And then secondly, delegate the authority of the Director of Finance and Corporate Services to make any changes necessary resulting from the outstanding matters. So we're all happy on the statement of accounts to do that, yeah? Okay. Secondly, on the external audit, it's recommended that the Governance Scrutiny Group approve the findings of Forvis Mazar's audit completion report, which is Appendix A, and approve the management representation letter in Appendix B. All happy with that? Yes. And finally, on the annual audit report, it's recommended that Governance Scrutiny Group note the receipt of the draft annual audit report at Appendix A. So that's all fairly straightforward. I think it is great. It's good to be in the position we're in, and long may that continue, basically. So thank you, Bethan. If you may be excused, and thanks a lot for your presentations. Item 8 on the agenda then is again our going concern, and Peter Linfield is going to present that.
Yeah, so this is, well, completely connected. Thanks, Beth. This is obviously connected to what we've been discussing, really, the going concern. So in essence, going concern is all about, are we effectively going to be a solvent organisation in the certainly next 18 months or so? Basically, the report goes on to talk about the various issues that we consider in coming to that judgment. And obviously, I come to it as a council statutory officer, and give a professional opinion in terms of that whether we are going to be a going concern. And you'll be pleased to know we will be a going concern in 18 months, as far as we can tell at the moment. So it's good practice that we do this review. And when we actually started these reports, we've not always done them actually. They're quite relatively new. They really started after COVID. And once a lot of councils started getting into, I suppose, trouble linked to COVID as a result of COVID, and more Section 114 notices started hitting the sector, the going concern reports have become obviously more important for local authorities in particular. So, as I say, there's from my perspective, it's a yes. We are going to be going concern, and hopefully everyone agrees based on what you know about the council. The main factors that are considered are stated at paragraph 4.2. So it's things like what's our current financial position, what's our projected position looking like, in other words, what's the budget's looking like going forward, what are our governance arrangements like, and what's the regulatory and control environment like. And the report then goes on to talk about all those issues, and a lot of which we've really discussed, really, because obviously as I mentioned earlier, the state having a good, accurate statement of accounts is a bedrock of in terms of where we're at with our financial position. But one thing I will say is, and I will say this to when I will speak to Cabinet and Corporate Overview Group and any other scrutiny groups, that we won't let rest on our laurels. We can't get complacent. There's lots going on. There's lots going on in the work, excuse me. There's lots of challenges out there. I mean, even today, the people were forecasting the base rate was going to come down, and it's not. So that just shows you how we're still on that. We seem to be on a continual knife edge at the moment when it comes to the certainly the macroeconomic position. So I think the challenge for the council really is not, I think, not less than even the next 2 years, obviously, but certainly going forward. So when you look at the medium-term financial strategy, we're going to face increasing pressures. We've got ongoing capital pressures. We fund our capital from our own resources. That they won't last forever. So there's still going to be, there's going to be even more pressure than particularly when we look at borrowing, those sorts of things. So, but in terms of this report, the main thing is that we are going to still be a going concern, which is really what the report's about. So happy to take any other questions on that, but thank you.
Okay, anyone got any comments on the going concerns? I think actually, Pete, you mentioned borrowing, and of course in the corporate peer review, one of the points made was that we shouldn't be afraid of borrowing if it's for the right reasons. And although we're justifiably, pleased that we don't, we are one of the few councils without any debt. It doesn't mean to say that if there's a good reason for borrowing, you shouldn't borrow. But I think I just think it's important, as Pete says, we're here as a scrutiny group, and we need to make sure that we do scrutinise the accounts, just rather than just pat everyone on the back and make sure that we're all happy with them. It is something that there'll always be challenges around the corner. So, okay. So if everyone's happy to approve those, well, the recommendation is that the governance scrutiny group note the positive outcome of the assessment made by Rushcliffe Borough Council's status as a going concern for the purposes of the statement of accounts for 23-24, and I think we're all happy to approve that. Thank you. Okay. So next item on the agenda is our risk management update, and that's back to Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So this is just a mid-year update on the risk report. So the group last met on the 3rd of September this year. So this is just a summary of the changes since you last saw the risk register. So paragraph 4.3 refers to those changes in risk description. So this was as a result of a previous audit on risk. So there was a recommendation to improve the articulation of the risks. So that work has been undertaken by management within the council to sort of better explain the impact and the cause of those risks. Paragraph 4.4 refers to training, which is important in keeping the issues highlighted within the council. So that's been arranged for October. Paragraph 4.7 covers the main changes within the risks. So there are 4 new risks that have been included, one in relation to CCTV, one in relation to the environmental agenda and the impact this may have on our budgets, one relating to the Freeport opportunity that we may have in regard to increased business rates, and one for the decline in the value of pooled or diversified funds, which we talk about usually and have done previously on the capital and investment monitoring. There is an increased rating for failure of partnerships, particularly as an example given the Integrated Care Board, and also on the asylum relocation, and this is mainly due to insufficient housing. There is one reduced risk in relation to missing planning targets, which the risk of that is reduced due to an improvement within internal resources. So that's a brief summary of the risk changes and all I wanted to cover at this point.
Okay, so we're being asked to make recommendations on risks that have red alert status. So we haven't got any.
We have,
right? Or have we?
Yeah, there are some within from page 265 in the pack,
yes.
which summarises all of the risks. So the red risks are the Gamston SPD, reducing new homes bonus, reduction in business rates base, centralised policy changes in relation to government policy, inflation, changes in central government funding, and the new CCTV camera one that I've just previously mentioned.
Okay, right. So I think, does anyone have any comments on any of the risks? Councillor Calvert.
I seem to remember you mentioned that in the last item about the corporate peer review, that the corporate peer review made some comments about the number of risks that we were measuring, and that it was far too many, basically. I'm not saying that was right or wrong, but I was wondering if paragraph 4.7 was an attempt to address that, because it talked about there are 4 new risks and 23 have been removed. So was that to do with a response to the corporate peer review, or is it just a coincidence?
No, I think the corporate peer review, it wasn't risks that we had too many of. It was our measures and our objectives.
Values, yeah.
The values. So we and I think that's been a common comment ever since I've been a councillor, is that when we go through the various scorecards we have, there's an awful lot of measurements that tend, and I think the corporate peer review was basically pointing out that can lose focus if you have too many things, that you're too many balls in the air, as it were. Is that right?
Sorry. I think the important thing, I don't think with risks, it's not whether you've got too many or too few, it's making sure you've identified certainly the high risk ones and the medium risks, and obviously you like to have less because that means you've got less risk, I guess, in terms of high risk. So, but I don't think there's not a number that says, oh, you should only have 10 risks. It's down to what the what the risk environment's like, I guess, what risks are there, and it's making, more importantly, is that we are identifying the ones that we need to manage or have to manage, because obviously we don't identify them to start with, and that's when you do get into trouble.
Councillor Birch.
With regards to the Freeport, I don't know if there's been information in other scrutiny groups, but I've certainly seen very limited information on it. When is this council approximately expecting the businesses to sort of set up at the Freeport and therefore generate business rates? Is there a sort of a rough plan there? Does the council sort of have an idea of when that's likely to happen?
There is a plan. The problem with the Freeport is, as with all great plans, they don't often go to plan, shall we say, or they get the plans changed. So if you remember with Freeport, the government's actually extended the the years in which the relief supply from I think it was till 2030, it's now till 2035. It did that for a reason, and that's because of the economic environment, which means what were plans for the Freeport to develop perhaps aren't going to be as quick as they'd hoped due to the broader economic issues that have affected the economy. So there's, if there's a affects like a downturn, that then affects development, and so the timetable then is put back even further. So the planned development isn't going to happen quite as quickly as anticipated.
And just on that topic as well, I mean, obviously, we've got a new government who's, in my view, is talking down UK PLC quite a lot, and I'm personally quite worried about investment. Is that being factored into this risk, or was this written pre the election? And because obviously, if investment isn't happening and it's going down, and you can measure that, that's a risk that would affect the Freeport. Because I'd imagine we were looking at multinationals, going to that site, and if investment is affected, is that a factor? Has that been factored into the risk?
Well, I'm not going to make a comment about the government for obvious reasons. That's more of a political comment, but I think the short answer is no, because it's really a bit early for because the government's only just got in any case. So I think that sort of direction of travel. There's so many other factors are affecting. Look what's happening in the Middle East at the moment. Who knows where that's going to lead us? What's going on in Russia and the Ukraine? So there's lots of issues. I think that's that I suppose that what we think may happen can quite easily change. I think that's goes back to what I said earlier. We're on this sort of almost this knife edge of not knowing really what's going on. There's probably more world uncertainty at the moment, certainly that I can remember, and in my more recent lifetime. I don't know about anyone else, but certainly maybe we used to have the Cold War, didn't we? I guess since those days, but.
You should have said that.
I think some of us in this room might have memories a bit longer than that, but I think it's probably worth saying. I understand what you're saying about risk, and obviously there's so many things outside of our control, and the risk is actually what we receive in business rates going forward, and that that's always been a relative unknown, I think, and at the end of the day, the power station, which is the part of the Freeport that we're really interested in, is only just closing. So until we see how it's beginning to shape up, I think all we can say is that as a council, we've done everything we can to put everything in place through the local development order, all those sorts of things, and the rest of it in many ways is outside of our control. So, but yes, it is a risk. Councillor Polenta.
Just on the risk and on the context, on the national context, I think the Labour government has adhered to do multi-year funding settlement and then competitive bidding that presumably would have an effect on the finances of the Rushcliffe Council, and this is something that has been evaluated or is taken into account, the risk or opportunity.
Well, to be honest, as far as competitive bidding is concerned for Rushcliffe, we don't get anything anyway. We haven't had hardly anything compared to other authorities. So probably the end for Rushcliffe isn't going to be much of an issue. It's really more what happens with the funding formula going forward, what happens with business rates. They have talked about things like business rates before, going back to government policy, and I said it is a bit early. There's lots of things they've said that may happen. So business rates reform, I think, was one of them. They've been talking about council tax potential changes, but we don't know enough at the moment. It's all too early, so we just need to see I suppose particularly when the October budget comes out, we'll see if we get any direction of travel from that, because that's going to be the first thing that will give us a better idea of government policy, I guess, in terms of local government finance.
So I think many unknowns there, but at the end of the day, we can only identify the risks and try and manage them, or anticipate them going forward. Has anyone got any other questions? Councillor Owen?
This is about section 4.4, risk management training. Do we know the date when this is going to be, please?
The training actually refers to staff training rather than member training. It's due to be early October.
I'm glad that question was asked, because I was going to ask the same thing, because I don't recall seeing it in my diary. So,
I think you probably had risk. Well, sorry, the group. It's been had
Yeah.
fairly recently, risk
Yeah.
management. What we try and do, one year we'll do it with officers, another year we'll do it with the councillors. So it's because I think you have quite a lot of training as it is. So.
okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
We'll be brief. Councillor Birch is absolutely right to identify going forward the level of risk which you might be facing. So it would be interesting, if that's the right word to use, when we come back again in this report to see where we are. I'm not going to go into politics. Absolutely not. Because I think we're all going to see enough of that panning out of the next few weeks, months. But it's absolutely right. I couldn't agree more. It's something we have to be mindful of, and I'm absolutely certain Peter and his team are. Because that's what they do. But good point.
Okay, I think everyone happy with that. So we're happy to approve the recommendation that we've noted the contents of the report. We've considered some of the risks and discussed them. We can't wave a magic wand and solve the risks, because if we could, they wouldn't be risks. So everybody happy to approve the risk management update? Okay, so so item 10, capital investment strategy, Q1.
Thank you. So this is the first update of 24-25 for the capital and investment strategy. And the first part of the report just covers the economic forecast, which Pete has just mentioned about it, the sort of fluctuation and volatility that we're experiencing at the moment with interest rates. Can't seem to predict with any accuracy where that's going to go. And this afternoon, like Pete says, it's been kept at 5%, which goes against what we originally anticipated. Paragraph 4.4 shows our projected income to be around 250k over budget, although given today's news, it's likely to be higher at the end of the year, in addition to any capital underspends and additional Section 106 money that we might be having the accounts at this point. Paragraph 4.5 summarises the investments over Q1, and Appendix A shows a snapshot as of the 30th of June as to where those investments were held and what the value of those investments were. Paragraph 4.6 discusses the options, and this is like a new option for the group. At the minute, we don't have any investments in bonds, so it's something that we are considering along with advice from the Treasury advisors. So we've not yet entered into this, but we're taking advice on, and they are recommended as being a good option to diversify our funds in. So I thought it's pertinent to put that in at this point so that you can sort of have an understanding as to what they are. Paragraph 4.8 provides the update on the pooled funds or the diversified funds, which have been reported for the last couple of years now. It's going in the right direction. So currently at 0.9 million variance to the original investment value, and that is summarised in Appendix B. As previously mentioned, there is a reserve to mitigate any loss on that, currently covered by a statutory override. Paragraph 4.9 talks a little bit about capital expenditure and the impact on the CFR, but for 24-25 the projection is that we are going to fully fund that capital expenditure, which means there is no increase in the CFR. There is a new accounting standard that's due to impact us at the end of this financial year, so it came live on April 24, and that's IFRS 16. This may impact on our CFR, and it's to do with how we treat in the accounts. It's how we treat leases. So there's a lot of work going on in the background with the finance team at the moment just to calculate the impact of that, although we do expect it to be minimal. Hopefully by Q2 report, we should be able to report that to the group. Appendix C shows the Treasury, Management and Prudential indicators, and there's some brief commentary in the paragraphs 4.18 to do with the net income from commercial investments, and this is lower due to having higher net revenue streams. Financing costs against net revenue is at minus 6.9%, 0.69% rather, and this is due to our investment income exceeding our borrowing costs, which in the main is MRP, minimum revenue provision. Paragraph 4.20 talks a bit about the commercial investments. So these are our existing investments rather than new ones, as we're not taking on any new commercial investments. And we have to show how the council's relying upon such income. So these measures show that the total contribution is around 13%, and this is shown at table 3. So that's very close to what we anticipated it to be. In summary, the environment continues to be volatile and it's difficult to predict, but we will monitor it closely and update anything you need to know to this group.
Okay, any questions on the investment strategy? Capital and investment strategy. Councillor,
Just on Appendix A.
go. Oh, sorry, you've come up as
Right, sorry.
It says Councillor Wheeler on my thing. I was just about to ask Councillor
Mine
Wheeler
as well,
to turn his microphone off.
So yes, Appendix A, most of the interest are very good, actually, more than 5%. I think average is 5.18. And there's 0.01. Is that the current account? Is it one or?
Yep, I think we have talked a bit about this before. Some of the accounts we have to keep small amounts in to keep the accounts open, and some accounts we have to hold money in just to diversify, because we have limits onto how much we can invest with certain institutions to reduce the risk of default with those institutions. So some of the accounts do have small balances in at low interest rates.
Councillor Calvert.
Just wanted to refer to paragraph 5.2 and give Councillor Birch some comfort, because it does say the UK economy is recovering. Yeah, okay.
I think can I just ask, we're here to scrutinise the council, not to get into political arguments, please. As the chair, I'm sure we've all got lots of things we can say about politics at the moment, but please let's refrain from it in a scrutiny group, please. But anyway, I know you can't resist the odd dig from both sides now and again. Okay, I think actually I always look at this, and I'm obviously we have our own portfolio of investments through our own investment strategy. I always think it's a great shame that we don't have that strategy going forwards, and that's largely due to actions of other councils who abused the system. We were always, I think, very measured with what we invested in. The point was to get returns on those investments that were commensurate with something funny, rather that we weren't into get rich quick money making schemes like some councils seem to be. But I think it was it does remain, though, that shows how good those investments have been, that our occupation rate was 100%, which I think in all the time that I've known the council, it was always in the high 90s, but to actually have it at 100% is quite outstanding, I think.
Completely agree, Chairman, but I think I mentioned this before, outside the point, just to give ourselves the publicity we need and deserve. Can we get rid of those vacant signs? Because if they're not vacant, they should be saying empty. I know I'm not quite sure how easy it is to change that. But you can shut me up a ladder and change them, couldn't you? That's an excuse. No, seriously,
Are you volunteering?
It'd be nice to say, no, we're full. We're full.
It's only just down the road from your house. You can do it.
No, not my job. No.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to actually say, hello, anyone passing by, we're full.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think point taken. Okay. I think also, obviously, this is about our investment strategy, and I think all of you should have now been informed that we've got Treasury training that's booked in for the 17th of December. So hope you've finished your Christmas shopping by then. It is something that we all have to, as a group, we should attend. It's always good to see lots of other councillors there, so they're obviously all, for a relatively dry subject, it seems to be quite interesting. And so I think I'm hoping we'll see you all there. Okay, so I think the recommendation again is that we note the update position, and I think we've successfully done that. So the final item on the agenda is the work programme going forward. So again, over to you, Sarah.
Thank you. Okay, so the November agenda is slightly less full as it would have been because we have moved the annual audit letter, which you've considered tonight, which would have usually gone to the meeting following that. So we've just got the standard items of internal audit progress, capital investment strategy, REPA review. There is a report on an update on the Redmond review of public sector audit, which was a few years ago now, I think perhaps 2021 when it was last considered. So it's coming back to this group in November. And then in February, we have, again, standard items, which potentially does look like a slightly large agenda, but I think we've covered it before in normal time, so I don't think there's an issue with the size of the agenda. The other thing I was going to mention is for the November committee, I'm currently looking at potentially arranging some audit committee training that may be brought to that session prior to the agenda itself.
So we'd be potentially looking at an earlier start to do half an hour training before the actual meeting. So just make a note of that in your diaries if you could. November. Okay. So I think that's Councillor Calvert.
Just the typo there. It should be 20.
Right.
It should be actually, yes. Well done. Well spotted. Yeah, I think you're the first.
I've got a Mars bar for you.
Okay. Excuse me. Okay, I think that concludes everything. No one's got anything further to add, so I'd like to thank you for your participation this evening. I think we've had a decent discussion. We've looked at a lot of information. There's always a lot to look at, but thank you for paying attention and coming up with some questions. So on that note, we will close the meeting. Thank you.